decentralized science.
Can you just make sure I'm always in the frame? Can you make sure I'm in the frame?
Yeah, you're good now.
If I go out of frame, let me know.
You're good. Okay, so if you can hear me say decentralized science, we're going to get started a little bit early because there's so many people in here and we want to keep things moving. Cool. Well, thank you guys all for coming out. I'm so excited. There's so many people interested in either prediction markets, clinical trials, or meeting other cool people out here. There's a lot of new faces, which is exciting. And I'm so honored to be speaking at DeSciNYC. Getting an invitation to this prestigious event is an honor for those people again. This is our 44th decentralized science that we've hosted. And we have a surprise one, which I'll actually just tell you right now, so you can get excited. It's on Thursday, and it will be by Cremu. Do you guys know who Cremu is?
No. Yes.
So we got him to come speak on Thursday, and he's like a huge Twitter follower, Twitter influencer in the science and genetics and everything space. And so he'll be here Thursday, and that's going to be really, really, really exciting. So I hope you guys can all. Their RSVP is here. This was late breaking. This was like an hour ago that we got him. So it's very late breaking. Okay, so before we start, let's get a quick picture so we can memorialize it. So everyone smile, and then we'll jump right in. We'll do a panoramic, not portrait, panoramic. So smile, everybody. 3, 2, 1. Oh my gosh, there's so many outstanding people here. Yay. Okay. So I started DeSciNYC, and this is actually the first time I've ever spoken at DeSciNYC. Normally someone else speaks, so it's kind of exciting. And so this is what I'm going to talk about. I've been working on this project called Endpoint Arena, which is a prediction market for clinical trials. And I had this idea for a very long time. I had this idea for maybe a couple of years. And I always wanted to sort of tie together markets, like financial markets, together with scientific markets. Gordon Gekko, have you guys seen Money Never Sleeps? He has this expression where greed is good. He's like, if you're greedy, you're good. You're efficient. You want to make things happen. And
Wall Street.
Oh, maybe you're right. Wall Street. It's in Wall Street, not Money Never Sleeps. And I did a PhD, and I saw a lot of people were just sort of lazy, and just they didn't have the ambition that you see on Wall Street. Maybe we should have done this on Wall Street. So I wanted to tie together this concept of prediction markets and markets together with science, and create a new sort of thing that would accelerate science. And I think there's a lot of trends that I'll talk about, which make this a very good time to explore this concept. So right now, we all want to ask the same question. We want to know, will a drug work? And no one can, everyone is biohacking these days. So everyone is doing N-of-1 experiments where they're injecting peptides, and then they see it works for them, but they don't. Like Brian Johnson is a perfect example of this. And he's doing a very, very good N-of-1 study, but we're not going to get to living forever through these N-of-1 studies by just relying on him. We need to start to decentralize it. We need to have many people doing N-of-1 studies. We need to have many people doing N-of-10 studies and N-of-100 studies. And we're not going to get there in this sort of slow method that he's doing. And the problem isn't necessarily the data, it's the incentive. So there's an incentive issue that we need to fix in order to get people to share their data, in order to get data to read out more quickly than the FDA does it now, where it takes multiple years. So we have a way of testing these drugs in a non-N-of-1 style way, and this is through clinical trials with the FDA. And they do answer the question, will this drug work? But the problem is it's very expensive to do these things. So a clinical trial can cost anywhere between $10 to $100 million to conduct. And they're very slow, they're binary, they take, if you go to clinicaltrial.gov, it could take 5 to 10 years for a trial to happen. And they're also not capturing the proper markets. A lot of their drugs are like oncology drugs that are very severe, but now we're seeing a whole gray market and cottage industry for people that want to look smacks, that want to get peptides, they want to increase longevity, and you're not seeing those style of trials happening on clinicaltrial.gov. So there's a real opportunity for new styles of drugs for people to test out new types of drugs. And again, it's not sort of like a lack of science. It's an incentivization. It's an incentive problem that we're dealing with here. So the idea here is markets like the Wall Street, like betting markets. These are sort of machines for figuring out truth. And markets have been very, very well applied in sports betting, in politics, and many things like that. But at the end of the day, these types of markets, they don't really make the world a better place. If the Giants or the Red Sox wins, it doesn't really matter. But if someone discovers a new type of drug, and you're betting on that, and you're accelerating science, and you're creating more accurate data, this actually could have a meaningful effect on society. But for whatever reason, we sort of barely use these prediction markets or markets in general for figuring out science. So we want to sort of turn this market into a way of doing clinical trials. And so as I said, these prediction markets can destroy billions of dollars overnight. Does anyone here trade stocks and pharma stocks? A couple people. You can see so I did a meetup in San Francisco, and I was talking to some people. I was in crypto before, and then I was talking to some people in biotech. I will say that people in biotech are way more degenerate in gambling than the people in crypto. Like the people in crypto look like novices in comparison to like the degeneracy that you see in biotech. One guy was showing me his portfolio, and he's like, "Yeah, I made like 10,000% on this one stock," and then in the crypto, you buy hype, and then it goes up to like 20% in a week, and you're disappointed. Right now, clinical trials are very expensive. They're $100 million to 10 to 100 million depending on the phase. They take 10 years. They fail 90% of the time. So if you start out with a drug and you push it all the way through, 90% of the time it fails in either stage 1, 2, or 3. So this is bad. And the way these pharma companies make decisions is sort of in the old school style of how Moneyball was, where they would just go by feel. They had no statistics. They didn't have any way of quantifying which drug was going to work and which drug wasn't going to work. So this is very bad for the pharma industry when you have these very big binary risks, because it makes their profits very lumpy. So one day they'll be making a lot of money, another day they'll be making a little money. And other industries have figured out ways to smooth out this and make these types of things more investable. So you'll have the airlines who use fuel swaps to smooth out how much risk is involved in pricing oil, in pricing fuel. In the oil industry, you can buy futures. Agriculture, you can buy frozen concentrate orange juice futures so that it remains constant. Did anyone see Trading Places, the movie? There's trading for the whole concept is on frozen concentrate orange juice, and they're trying to trade the commodity stocks on that. And in credit, they have this thing called a credit default swap. So if multiple people are failing or aren't paying their bill, you can pull all their credit and their default risk together into pools and sell that off. And for pharma, nothing like that had sort of come about. So biotech has these very large risks, and if a clinical trial is going to succeed or fail, but there's no way for them to hedge that risk and smooth out that curve to make it more investable. So the prediction markets are sort of like a way to price risk in science. So you can say how likely is this thing going to be successful or not. So I'll show you what the product looks like. So we built this thing that's like a prediction market, like Polymarket or Kalshi, but really focused on science. And the way it works is we find, and if anyone has questions along the way, feel free to ask. Okay, just saying. The way it works is we pull together a bunch of clinical trials. So there's 7,000 clinical trials a year that happen. And if you're in the back, you can squeeze forward a little bit. If you're squeezed forward, everyone take a step forward. Get more people. Is there room in the back now? No? A little bit? Did that help? Okay. So what we do is there's 7,000 trials a year, and obviously not all of these trials are important. Some are on rare diseases, some are on bigger markets, and we try and choose like the top 10 each month that are coming due, and create markets for them around phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, if our protocol changes, and create different markets. And let me show you how it works. I'll give you a live demo. So the way it works is you have all these different markets here, and it's like if we can go into autism spectrum disorder, and what it has is this is the probability that this endpoint will succeed or fail. So we put so a clinical trial has these things called the clinical trial has these things called endpoints. So I'll show you here. And this is the thing that makes this work really well, is we have these endpoints here. So they're measuring autism off of some baseline at day 110. So we look to see what is the most important endpoint for a trial, and then we say, is when the trial reads out, is it going to be positive or is it going to be negative? And so we create a market around that. And then what you can do is you can bet if this is going to be successful. And you can bet $1 or $10, however much you want. Here is the price of the stock. So this is the company that's actually doing it. And what's interesting is oftentimes a company will have anywhere between like 10 to 100 assets. So when you're investing in like AstraZeneca or Novo, it's almost like you're investing in an index. You're not actually investing in like one individual drug. And when there's a trial readout, you'll have like 5 or 10%. They'll have a huge fluctuation, even though that one asset on like phase 2 is only a marginal part of their total like market cap for that stock, but it still has a very big fluctuation. So I think there's like an arbitrage opportunity there. And then what we have is you can learn a little bit more about how the clinical side of things, how big it is, how many people it affects, how big of a market it is, the news news for that drug, stuff about the trial, and to create a little liquidity. And we have a bunch of AI agents that are betting. So we are testing Claude, GPT, Grok, Gemini, and they're all looking at the clinical trial and trying to determine if it's undervalued or overvalued, and we give each one like $10,000 and let it bet to see if it will do well or not. And then we have like a leaderboard up here where you can see how well it's doing, and you can see Claude is actually crushing it, DeepSeek is doing terribly, Gemini is pretty good, and later on we'll talk a little bit about the personality types of each of these different models. But it's very interesting. Using prediction markets as a way to benchmark AI models is very good. So one of the problems with benchmarking any model is you have some contamination issue. So if you try to benchmark a model on a data set that's already been released, it knows the outcome to this. So you need to always be sort of releasing new stuff. And so this is a good way of doing it. And it's also a good way of doing it because it also forces a confidence thing. Like an AI model can say like, oh, I think this, but it needs to give it a confidence interval. And with this, you can measure confidence based on how much it wants to size into a position here. And then we also have like the model reasoning, so you can see like why each of the models chose a different outcome for something. So it could say like, oh, I was looking at an endpoint, I was looking at the like mechanism of action, I was looking at what people were saying on Twitter, and so they give some reasoning here. And then finally we have the oracle. So we have to eventually close these markets. And so what happens is the sponsor of the clinical trial will release a press release on their website that says like, we read out this way and we met this endpoint or we didn't meet this endpoint. Is there any questions on it? Yeah, go ahead.
Companies will usually sometimes say they succeeded in a trial even though they didn't actually formally meet the endpoints because biotechs are shifty like that, how are you going to account for it?
So his question was like sometimes there's a lot of fluff in the PR releases. Our Oracle, so Polymarket uses something called UMA to like determine this, and Kalshi uses another model. What we're using is we're having like a common prompt that everyone agrees upon that will read out one way or another, and when that reads out, then that's the final decision of what happens. And most of the time, we haven't seen a case yet where it wasn't able to cut through the fluff of what was actually like said. Yeah, in the back.
When you say we, is that your team, and does that mean that the choice of prompt is biased towards your team?
Yeah, well, we're the market, so we don't bias. We don't necessarily care which.
Do you mean all the users?
We being the people that design it, so we publish it here, and I think it's fairly standard, but you see what it is before you bet on the market, so you know what you're getting into, and if you don't agree with this, you can email us and we can update it, or you can choose not to bet on it too. Yeah.
Do you give each of the models when you're evaluating the same prompt, or do they get a tailored prompt?
Each one gets it's a great question. Each one gets the exact same prompt and gets the maximal number of tools that it can get access to. So like if it has access to the web, we give it access to the web. If it has access to clinicaltrial.gov, we get it. We don't modify it or fine tune any of the models at all, but we try and give each model the best chance of success that it can get.
Can you give us an example of the prompt and like from the beginning to the end?
Yeah, so the prompt looks like this. You can read, it's on endpointarena.com/method if you want to read the thing, but we just basically say like, you are an expert biotech analyst, give us a couple sentences of reasoning why you choose a model in one way or another. Here's the position that you currently hold, here's the price of the thing, here's the NCT number, here's a little bit of info about like what the trial does. Feel free to Google and web search as much as you want to like. We try and keep it relatively minimal so that we don't bias it in one way. We try and keep it very thin, but it's publicly available.
But you're deciding your entire model around those prompts rather than.
Yeah, I mean there's not. I've tried like 5 different prompts. It doesn't really affect it too much. It's relatively stable. It's at some point we just have to. The goal here isn't to say that this is the best prompt or this is the best model. It's just to establish a reasonable baseline that other people can build, that other people can exceed or do worse than. We're not trying to be the number one here. Yeah, go ahead.
So usually, like if you're in a biotech or a biopharma, you usually know what the endpoint results are before the press release is out. So some people will have access to that information beforehand. How do you?
Yeah, you shouldn't do that. I mean, this is for people. This is for people that are scientists. I think science is very interesting because science is each party has perfect information. So science is deterministic, given some certain large enough n, I think. And so basically, this is for people that want to speculate on forecasting science in an accurate way, or doing their own clinical trials, hiring another type of CRO, and getting a new way of discovering these types of things, and not relying on that way of doing it. Yeah.
Become an actual betting market, or is this?
Oh, I'll talk about that in a second. Yeah. Go ahead.
Doesn't the SEC have a rule that if you have a late-breaking clinical trial of major clinical significance, say, presented in a meeting 2 months from now, you're allowed to say if the trial is positive or negative, but you can't give any more?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are the FDA is very complex, and there are various triggers and ways to work around it. And these markets, we haven't gotten into these like edge cases as yet, but it is an issue that we have to deal with at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, so I have a question about the Oracle. So
Yeah.
I looked at the way you describe it, you just say positive result. However, there are times where something will be positive statistically, but destroys creates amount of value for the company because the effect size is too small. Or yesterday with Abivax, for example, shitloads of people got cancer, but now technically out positive here. Like,
Yeah.
How do you
So
guys
we're very careful with how we choose our endpoints. So for cancer, we usually choose overall survivability, which is the thing that the market cares about more so than like progress-free, whatever tumor it is. And so we do a lot of work we did a regression to look at what impacts which endpoints impact which types of stock prices, and then we also choose endpoints that can be, or that are binary, that are above or below a certain thing.
No, I'm saying like this hit the endpoint, but the results of the trial make the drug pretty non-viable in the indication because it gives people cancer, even though it's an I.
Yeah, so this we try and choose endpoints that are reflective of what will happen in the stock price, and if we do a good job of choosing endpoints, that shouldn't happen. But this is a cleaner way of betting. We're trying to tie I'll talk about this in a second. We try and tie the endpoints as closely as possible to what will happen in the stock price. Sometimes we might not get it right, but that's the goal. And this, what you're basically asking is can we choose endpoints that are reflective of the stock price or that are clinically significant, that what the patient or the market cares about? And we're trying to do that. It's not an easy task actually, but that's the goal.
I think another way maybe asking this is, are you looking at safety as well?
In like dose escalation in phase 1?
No, because what he's saying is basically that's an adverse event example. So if you look at both efficacy and safety, you can get a better kind of balanced prediction.
Yeah, we're trying to choose markets that are clear and binary. Maybe there's room for adding in. There's always you can always add in more markets. Maybe I think what will end up happening is these can be done in practice on this website. I think it just kills the usability. So it'll take a little bit of time for us to get to these more complicated things. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Question. So, from my understanding, you build that because you care about science and clinical trials, right? Have you considered what the effects of that could be on the clinical trial space that's, as you said, is already very complicated and very hard? To give an example, we all know that sports and betting have let's say, a connection of corruption of one to the other. Don't you are afraid that what are you making is going to basically...
I think this cleans up in comparison to the status quo. I think this is much cleaner and more efficacious than the status quo.
In what way?
Like our endpoints are much clearer. You can read out things more quickly. You can see which drugs are working much earlier. Like if you're a patient today and you want to if you can only enroll in one trial, our website gives you the probability of success of all the different trials. There's no one else that offers that at the moment.
Sure, but let me give you another example. I'm a patient on the clinical trial, and I see what your multipliers are. I can sabotage the trial myself to make me win money. And I get money
I don't think that will be significant.
I'm just asking if you have considered.
I mean, I think any tool can be used in a variety of ways. I think this will be net positive.
In what way would you think this is going to be positive for the clinical trials?
If you're a patient, you don't want to be churning through with your life. You don't want to be churning through a trial that you know won't be successful. I think that's net positive.
Sure. But you started saying about all the problems of clinical trials, and because I am in clinical trials, you're right. You're completely right. My question is, how do you think this can have a net positive effect on clinical trials, and after that, because clinical trials are made for drugs and humanity, how this can benefit humanity?
I think this will accelerate science. It'll incentivize new types of clinical trials to happen. I mean, I'll talk a little bit more how we're going to become a CRO. It encourages people to do research on different types of drugs and accurately predict the future of which drugs are going to be successful without having to go into patients. I think there's a lot of ways.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, one other question. So in talking about how AstraZeneca is buying a bucket of stocks, when we look at the top trials, all of them are in more or less single asset biotechs.
Yeah.
So why would you do this trial instead of betting in the stock market itself?
Well, because this is a much cleaner bet. So
but if you only have one asset, is it
no?
really
So
not
some
cleaner?
things have one, but some things that might. So I actually have a list of all the pipelines, all the drugs in all the different pipelines, and most of these drug companies have over 10 assets. There's very few that have only one asset. Yeah, go ahead.
So if I'm a patient and I'm undergoing clinical trials, and I go to your website and I see that your predictor says that the clinical trial is going to fail.
Mm-hmm.
Dropout in the clinical trial is a huge problem.
Yeah.
That's going to promote a dropout, and that's going to result in the fact that the clinical trial is not going to be over because they wouldn't have enough points or people to read out the results.
Doctors hate this and patients love it. So doctors want to finish their trial by any means necessary, and patients don't want to be part of a machine that's churning them like a meat grinder through something that's never going to work.
But you don't know. Your predictor says
No, but
doesn't
it
mean-
gives information to the patient, who's ultimately the person that's bearing the responsibility of this. So I think reasonable minds can differ on this, but I think this is a great tool for providing information to patients that they can use as part of a plethora of things, consulting with their doctor, consulting with ChatGPT, and making their own clinical decision. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it is really, really cool. I'm just wondering, how are you deciding on expanding it to non-clinical trials, like the peptides and everything you were saying?
That's the last slide. So we have like an app, yeah. Go ahead.
But for that question, on the other way, if there's a patient who signed up on a clinical trial because you're saying that it's very, like, there's a high probability of
Yeah,
being-
I mean, this is one of many tools that someone can use to make their decision. It's not a silver bullet.
Yeah, but at the same time, the clinical trial will be a black box up until the point where you release it. There's going to be adverse events, protocol violations, all of that. You cannot account for that.
But people can try and forecast it using AI models, using related things. Like people try and use tools earlier on. Where this encourages people to develop tools earlier on that will reduce the risks. That will hopefully that will provide more information to patients in making their own decision.
I am a clinical trials manager, so I know on the ground like how clinical trials look like, and of course you can predict it, but like for a certain trial, it might not be.
I guess I would hope that people develop AI models that are able to accurately predict this once you provide an incentive mechanism for them to do so. But it might take some time to get there.
Apologies if I missed this, but
What?
whether you really believe this will become a fungible marketplace like a poly.
Yeah.
You do, so
Yeah.
it's kind of important to you.
Go ahead. We'll do a couple more.
If you want to make it like a poly market style thing, since these are all poly, I didn't see what's doing this here. Could you do like a collateralized trial obligations essentially, where you bundle all these together?
Yeah, so we're gonna release an ETF that has like the top 10.
No, at the
phase.
At the shitty ones too. That's
Well, basically, I'll talk about it in a second, but we want to create like an ETF that has like the top 10 phase 3 trials that people can use that as a predictor. Yeah. Go ahead.
So, what sources are you using to come up with a probability? I mean, are you trading on sentiment and
No, we just create the market. Like it's up to the individual actors to figure out the probability of success. So we create a liquid market that other people can, and then we use something called an automated market maker that creates the market that determines the probability of success given what individual actors are doing. Go ahead.
So in theory, like a pharma company that wants to get ahead of this and get into the world you were describing with the airlines and oil and everything, like they could basically bet or hedge by using this.
Exactly. So I'll talk about it in a second, but basically there's two types of people that want to bet on this. One is if you are the pharma company, you want to ensure that if your trial fails, you'll still get money. And the other side is actually very interesting, and I didn't realize it until later on. If you are a payer, like an insurance company, you want to hedge your risk that this thing won't get approved. So if there's like a big thing like an Ozempic or something that costs millions of dollars for you, or billions of dollars, like it's crazy how big United Health is. It's crazy how big these insurance companies are. But you want to hedge your risk that won't get passed, because that's going to make a major payout for you. So that's generally the two sides of the market. Obviously, there's a lot of in between with traders who want to trade as well, but that's generally the structure of the market. Yeah, go ahead in the back.
So I think you mentioned an automated market maker briefly. I'm
Yeah.
just curious about how you bootstrap liquidity for these.
Well, we just provide the liquidity in the AMM. Eventually, we'll move to a CLOB and move to something else, but this is an intermediary thing to get this working. Yeah, go ahead.
What is your monthly volume?
We're not disclosing that yet, but it's good. Yeah, go ahead.
In the sports world, there's lots of secondary markets, like who has the most points, who, like all these, who's going to be the MVP. Have you ever thought about these things for this?
Say, what would be an example?
So in the sports world, you have who wins the game, but you also have who has the most points.
Oh yeah, so we could create more markets, and I think that's a cool thing. We're trying to keep it simple for one endpoint per trial at the moment, but yeah, you can have all sorts of derivatives, and like another important one is like, did they change the protocol of the trial midway through? And we want to have stuff like that. Yeah, I think it would be cool to have like something like that. Yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned that you're using different models to trade. predict.
Yeah.
What patterns have you discovered about different models? Do they typically guess the same thing, or like?
I'll talk about that in a second. I have a slide. And it's not, we have these 9 models, but there's also a large community of people that have developed their own fine-tuned models. We have an MCP and an API where people can plug in their models that have been tuned specifically for clinical trials to create a better probability of success. This is just a baseline to get started. Anyone else? Oh yeah, go ahead in the back.
There's already a long history of during mergers and acquisitions of pharmaceutical companies, of the deal being contingent on certain drugs being approved, and then subsequent lawsuits about company A accuses company B of dragging their feet so that doesn't get approved. Doesn't this just exacerbate the issue of incentivizing companies to drag their feet so it doesn't get approved on a certain deadline, and maybe they'll just do it again the next time they apply down the
It's a good point. In some of the models that when we look at how they bet, they start freaking out when there's not a readout by the claimed time. I don't know. Go ahead.
Yeah, just trying to think of the positives here, maybe just around, I think, like securitizing or increasing the liquidity for like an outcome for rare disease trials. Basically, if the market is small, do you think that drug developers or maybe insurance companies will be able to sort of increase the liquidity?
Totally, I think this makes things much more investable. So like because you can hedge your risk and you can bundle risk together and you can get liquidity around getting in and out of a stock, it makes these rare diseases and these smaller types of drugs much more investable. And the fact that you can now begin to offer insurance on things makes you much more investable as a company to an investor, because now they have downside protection. Quickly, we're going to try and get. Yeah, go ahead.
Just one more.
It's a good question.
I worked at a biotech before.
Yeah.
At our firms, I have low inside knowledge and all that. And occasionally we see patients talk about certain things. So I'm curious about the models, because some of them have access to Reddit, and you might have patients talking about their clinical trial on Reddit and the stock.
Yeah.
How does that influence the models?
Well, I'll talk about that's our last slide. So I'll talk about how you can decentralize this even further besides just individually. Okay. Oh yeah, go ahead. Last one.
Assuming these are really thin markets, how are you planning on dealing with things like toxic flow or insider trading or companies being bad actors? And to that end, what does your matching engine look like? Is it a CLOB or do you have an AMM?
We have an AMM. We're not using a CLOB at the moment, but we will when it becomes an issue. Okay, so we will continue on here. So we've also gotten, so this is how we got Cremu to come. He retweeted us and we went very viral. We got like 1,500 likes. And he loved this concept, and we had some other people. We also, do you guys know Fierce Biotech? They recently wrote an article about it, which was exciting. So we have the trials here. We have a lot of, we have a lot of people that are betting, we have our 10 models that are betting, but we also have a good community of people that are betting as well using our MCP model that we have built. And what's cool about this is they have access to much more interesting data sources than what out-of-the-box Claude has access to. So they can have reasoning, they have web searches, all sorts of stuff like that. We give a common prompt, so if you guys hate it or love it, you can at least look at it and we open source it. This isn't meant to be the end-all be-all prompt. It's meant to establish a solid baseline that a reasonable person would think of. And basically what it says is, you're an expert biotech analyst, you have to make a yes or no decision, and you have to figure out, here's your portfolio of how many stocks, of how many markets exist, and how much do you want to buy? Do you want to buy anything, or do you want to sell anything? And if so, how much do you want to buy? We also give it access to news, so we're scraping every single pharma company's website, classifying all their articles, classifying them as trial results or results calls or decision, a trial design update, a trial start, enrollment, all sorts of things, and we're giving those to the models as well. And this is we're getting to one of the questions was, how is this different than a stock? And so when you invest in AstraZeneca, Novo Nordisk, Amgen, these companies have an unbelievable number of assets that they're testing. And each of these things has a different market cap associated with it. So when you do an individual readout on a specific trial, you're getting a much cleaner access to a certain market that that you actually care about. And oftentimes you see like a stock go up or down a lot when you get a positive result or a negative result. But this is just based on the endpoint, which is what someone mentioned earlier. Is like sometimes we don't choose the endpoint correctly, but it's pretty accurate. Yeah, go ahead.
Why are you limited only to public companies, or it sounds like that's what
Yeah, it was just a design decision. It just makes it easier because a lot of times the private companies they basically go out of business when they when they don't have a successful result, and so we can never get the readout.
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
You may have talked about this, but how do you deal with like information cutoff, like date-wise?
For what?
Like sometimes information gets leaked, like as the trial is ongoing, like towards the readout.
That's included in the market. Like we don't.
So you just continually update the prediction? Is that?
We create a market that that agents or people bet on. We make a market. It's like NASDAQ doesn't tell you the price of Google. They tell you what the market price of Google is. Okay. And we have a leaderboard. So the leaderboard is very interesting because you can see who's doing well, who's able to accurately predict different clinical trials. And then, so this is, I think an important question is who wants to buy this risk and who cares about this? So on one side you have a biotech company that has to lock up a certain amount of capital in order to go after different pipelines, and they want protection in case all of their assets fail. So they want to buy insurance, like you buy fire insurance for clinical trials, so that they want to buy the no side of it. They are betting that they're going to fail, so that in case if it's successful, they get $10 billion. But if it's failure, they get another $5 million to be able to try another pipeline and have another bite of the apple. Another interesting one we talked with was a service provider. So oftentimes when these clinical trial companies go out of business, when a pharma company goes out of business, they don't pay their CRO or whatever. So they also want to bet no, so that in case it fails, they can get money. And then the other interesting one is who's betting on the other side? And it's the health insurance companies, the employers, the people who have to pay, and they're on the hook. One of the questions I had is like, okay, if Ozempic passes, like this makes it so that your medical bill will probably go down long term, right? But the problem is these health insurance companies, they don't care what happens long term. They care that they're on the hook for an Ozempic shot, $2,000 a month at this individual time. So this is a problem with the system, but they're the ones who don't want these drugs to pass because then they're on the bill. Then they have to foot a large bill for some of these different types of drugs. And I'm sure there will emerge many types of people who want to buy and sell different types of risks. So this is sort of an interesting thing. We do a lot of work in which type of endpoints to choose. So we have to look at the stock, and then we look at the type of endpoint that they had. So on average, you get a little bump if you have a positive readout, but you get almost double the bump down if you have a negative readout. So negative readouts move the stock a lot more. Phase 2 and 3 have the largest reaction, which is actually kind of funny. There's a lot of risk in phase 2, but phase 3 actually is sort of the thing that moves the stock more, which is unexpected. And the market oftentimes doesn't care about what the primary endpoint is. So a clinical trial will have a primary endpoint that they say is the thing they're going for, but that's not oftentimes the thing that the market cares about. So we do a lot of things to choose which market. They do a lot of things to choose which market is the correct one. Yeah, go ahead.
What's the period? Is this year, last year?
This is 2 years worth of data. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Any brief, given this is so close to moving a stock, any brief from the SEC that this is sort of...
This is all paper trading right now.
But if you were to go to real money, would they regulate you, or are you worried that they...
We're talking to people about that. Yeah, go ahead.
What's stopping Garci from incorporating something like that?
What was it?
What's stopping Garci from incorporating the same
I'll talk about that at the end. Yeah. Go ahead.
Which percentage of your trials don't have a readout because you changed along the way or you didn't finish?
Yeah. Well, we try and find readouts that are going to happen in the next month, and then that are imminent and then use those. But as we do longer term studies over the course of a year or two, then it will become more of an issue. Okay, we're going to continue on. So choosing a market is really hard. So for cancer, basically, like, we want to go for overall survivability as opposed to like, did the tumor shrink? Because that's what the market cares about, and that's also what the patient cares about, right? The patient doesn't care if their tumor shrunk, if they died at the end of it. So choosing these endpoints is very, very hard and very, very critical. And on average, if a phase 1 thing passes around 50% of the time, phase 2 passes around 30% of the time, phase 3 passes around 60% of the time. And this is important because this is our overall this is for season 5, how well each model did in choosing its accuracy, sensitivity, specificity for these. So Claude's doing very well along with ChatGPT, which is cool. How did they succeed and fail? So things did well. Each model did very well when it looked at the endpoint and tried to actually look at like the mechanism of action and tried to understand the science and tried to like get specific on it in the endpoint. Things didn't do well when they looked to sort of like what they thought would happen just based on prior data. So based on how many phase 2 trials are passed, and then going with that, they'd fail often. When they sort of when they looked too much at the news, they would often fail as well. When they tried to listen to what other people were doing, they would fail. And when they would freak out also if their information wasn't disclosed, they would start dumping the stock, and that oftentimes was a bad thing for them long term because there was just some delay in the readout. And sizing is very important. So like a model can be confident in how it does, but it needs to be able to put the proper amount of money into it. So models were not super good at managing a whole portfolio. So they could look at one individual endpoint, but then they would oversize into it and not look at their entire portfolio because of the way that we conducted this. But I think this is an interesting area of research in trying to figure out how you look at a specific endpoint, but then also measure the amount of risk and confidence you have that relative to the other things that could be in your basket. Yeah, go ahead.
Have you thought about preventing institutional investors from having access? Because very easy example, if I'm long stock and I want the stock to go up, and I realize that the liquidity here just takes like $5,000 to make the probability go up, and then people take that, post on Bloomberg, and then the stock goes up.
This is just all part of the game. Markets are complicated and they're all interconnected, right? So like this is just one of the many mechanisms on which things can happen.
But this one where the finances of the people that can do this are...
The same thing happens with stocks, right? So like at the end of the day, like what you want is...
stocks, you cannot move a stocks with $10,000.
Oh, you can absolutely move stocks.
Not with $10,000.
But these hedge funds have way more than... They put $50 million into this stock.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Who won the ABVX outcome yesterday?
I don't know. I was preparing for this talk. I was preparing for this. I didn't have a chance to look. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
I was wondering, like, how do you think about the trade-offs between like it being prediction accurate, like the market being accurate for prediction, if it's also being used for hedging? And so, like, if you have a lot of people who have exposure to the upside or downside,
yeah,
they're not making a bet based on like what they actually think is the likelihood. They're making a bet
yeah.
based on how do they hedge.
I guess it's all just priced into at the end of the day. So the market will determine what is the proper price. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Does it also allow participants to buy this if they have some sort of information about
Yeah, we'll talk about that in the last slide. Anybody else? Okay, we're good. Okay, so this is model personalities. I thought this was kind of cute. Grok, I thought Grok would be excellent at this type of thing because it would have access to all of Twitter, but it didn't do a great job. Kitty was too negative. DeepSeek was good. Claude just understood the science in ways that other models didn't. And I thought Gemini, because that's by Google and has AlphaFold, would be great at this, and it did do a good job of looking at the specific endpoints, but it did okay overall. And then okay, so this is actually a very interesting slide. So, we think of we think of prediction markets as only forecasting what will happen. And I think someone said, like, you have these different people who are participating. You have hedging, and you have people that are like betting based on what they know. So you can actually look. It's not a prediction market isn't just a tool to measure what, like a measuring instrument. You can actually use it to influence the world, which I think is cool. So imagine you have like someone who has a very rare disease. They could buy up a ton of the nose stock and say, like, if someone is able to cure this, then I'm willing to reward them. If, say, someone has like multiple sclerosis, they'll put 10 people will put in $1 million, and you'll have like a $10 million pool for someone who's able to cure multiple sclerosis. And so this transforms a prediction market not into like a measuring tool, but to like an outcome creation tool, where you're actually starting to shape the future, which I think is cool. You can use it for patients that are deciding which clinical trial to enroll in. This is a very valuable support tool. You can see the probability of success going into it. You can contribute N of 1 data. You can coordinate capital and make individual trials much more investable and liquid to be able to hedge their markets. And you can create new types of data sets, which I will talk about here. So this is an app that we just released. It's called a shadow trial. And basically what you can do is, if you're on Reta and you want to see there's currently a clinical trial where they're looking at Reta's impact on sleep. And a lot of people are already on Reta, and a lot of people already have like a wearable device. And so what this does is it collects wearable data for around sleep, acne, psychiatric things, all sorts of different things that are somewhat easy to measure. And this doesn't work for everything, of course. This is very specifically tuned for types of trials that are easy for users to report. It collects the data. There's an on-device LLM that looks at the data, and so the data never leaves the device. And then it looks at the market and looks at the probability of success based on your individual data, and then creates another shadow trial, and then uses that data, and then people basically stake based on how confident they are in their data. So if someone's losing a lot of sleep and they're on Reddit, they're very confident that the trial is going to fail. So this is a way of incentivizing new types of data and really decentralizing the clinical trial stack while giving the user it's integrated with HealthKit. It uses an on-device 3B LLM, OLAMA LLM, and then looks at the market, looks at the probability of success that it calculates, looks at the market, and if the market, if it sees that it's mispriced, it'll try and fix it. And it's a way of encouraging people to go from these N of 1 style trials to N of 10 and of new types of trials. I'm sure we have a lot of friendly questions. Yes.
People are on placebos and they don't know because it's a double-blind study.
Yeah.
How does that affect it?
Well, this is for people that have data that is their own, and use that to forecast what they think will happen. So this,
it doesn't affect the model.
I mean, placebo is an interesting thing because, like, when someone's, it's a complicated. I don't know.
You're not on the clinical trial.
Yeah, this is for people outside the clinical. This is a shadow trial, so this is for people that are not participating in it, but want to contribute to what they think will happen. And if this is successful and works, you can imagine it not just being used for the type. You can have people create new trials and allow them to participate in these new trials that are outside of clinicaltrial.gov, which is ultimately the goal, because like a lot of clinicaltrial.gov is for very nasty diseases, and I see there's a very big future for these biohacker types and like longevity type drugs, which are going to be more like opt-in and by the biohacker type, and this is a way to incentivize more data collection from like the N of 1 to the N of 100 style things. Yeah, go ahead.
To backtrack a little bit, earlier you mentioned if there's $10 million going towards invest.
Yeah.
How do they know that it will go towards their specific cause? How many safeguards against?
Well, so you bet on a specific endpoint. So you're able to cure this specific type of multiple sclerosis.
Yeah.
Then the payout, and it's approved by the FDA on that specific endpoint. Then the market closes on the other side, and the person would have to buy a lot of the other side before disclosing that they've come up with a cure, and then the market would close and they would get paid.
So how do you ensure it's not like speculators or
That could happen too. Yeah. So I mean, these markets are complicated, right? Like there's many dynamics that happen. Yeah. Anyone else? Oh yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned this potentially influencing like the behavior of like cures in maybe like a distant future. How do you see this incentivizing certain maybe like types of cures versus others? Because in a way, it's like, I mean, you know, people putting money, and when you see money being shifted towards maybe let's say this cures for these kinds of things versus others, do you believe that might incentivize those cures?
Yes. Anyone else? Yeah.
I might have missed something. So, like, for the people in the shadow trial, could they sell their data to market makers on the?
They could sell data. Yeah, exactly. So, but they come up with a market price for that data.
Yeah.
And then they can come up with it. Oh, yeah, exactly. It's a very interesting thing. I'm very excited about this, actually. I think this is a way of not just trying to replicate what's on clinicaltrial.gov and creating a financial market around it, but this is actually adding value to the ecosystem using new types of data. Yeah, go ahead.
What's stopping someone from completely hijacking the data that the wearable tracks?
So they have to stake. They just be shooting themselves in the foot because they're staking based on how confident they are. So if they are very certain that Retta impacts their sleep, they're not just disclosing this like they are on Twitter. They're backing it with a financial side. So they're putting $1,000 behind it. And so if they do that, they can do that for sure. But the genius of this is that it incentivizes accurate data collection, because if you disclose something that's wrong, people will be able to see your position, and you know the market will eventually close it on the other side, and you'll just lose your $1,000.
I'm curious about the federal institutions like CFTC, FDA, like GSIS, or whoever is interested. What are you doing to kind of get their interest? My question is really do they want this, or is it more of they can't stop it?
I'm talking with a lot of people about the proper way to release this, and that is good for consumers. And it's a very complicated question, and we're talking to many different people to figure that out. But yeah, I think generally it depends on the type of person. The CFTC now is very beneficial towards prediction markets because they see the value in them. That could change, but I don't know. It's a very complicated question. Yeah, go ahead.
No, following up on her question, let's say you're on Ozempic and you say it's going to mess up your sleep. Can't you submit fake data?
Yeah, but you have to stake it with money.
I mean, you say I'm only going to get an hour a night. You just submit fake data showing you only got an hour a night. Don't you win?
No, because the market eventually has to close based on what the outcome from what the FDA says.
The whole market.
Yeah.
Wait, isn't your Oracle just a bloody LLM?
Well, the Oracle is what's said by the FDA on clinicaltrial.gov, and then we use an LLM to parse out the endpoint. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
How do you see liquidity for these markets being provided itself?
What was it?
How do you see liquidity for these markets being provided itself?
So initially it's just an AMM that we fund with a certain amount of money, and then eventually once we get more liquidity, we'll switch to an order book. Yeah, go ahead.
For the shadow markets,
Shadow trials.
Shadow trials, rather. I could understand you having a set number of trials based on clinicaltrials.gov. But for the shadow trials, anybody could create their own trial. How would that work?
I think eventually. So that would be the hope. So eventually, everyone here knows vibe coding, right? So you have an idea and you vibe code it. In the future, I know this sounds crazy today, but people will be able to vibe drug. So you'll have a drug that you'll just tell Claude, I want to vibe code this drug for this very specific N of 1 disease. Maybe I want my knee to be better, maybe I want my nose to be bigger or smaller, whatever. You'll develop a very specific drug just for that. You'll go to some CRO, you'll go to some lab in the cloud, you'll print it out, and you'll say, I want to test this on 100 people, and I want to feed this into the top of this and see if it works for them. and then you'd be able to feed in new types of drugs into this platform, and then be able to test them in that way.
Follow up.
Yeah.
Even
This is far out, though, of course.
Yeah. Even for these kind of shadow trials, you would still need some kind of authority to make the ultimate decision on.
So right now we're still relying on the FDA to do that, and when we go into this more speculative thing, I don't know exactly how we would do that quite yet. Go ahead.
Could they potentially register, like you said, an end of one study of my own in this shadow trial?
Yeah, but no one's going to invest in that because it's just too small of a market. Yeah, go ahead.
So, just to confirm, so the idea behind the shadow trial is, okay, Red is going through an actual FDA process.
Yes, exactly.
Lots of people are on research-only use
Yes.
these peptides. They're able to basically like have an on-prem Oracle or whatever, like making a bet for them that doesn't disclose any of their data.
Exactly. Exactly.
And then their bets both A, make them money, and then B, make the market prediction better.
Exactly.
For what's going to happen
Exactly.
on the FDA side.
Exactly. You did a great job of explaining that. Yeah. You should. Well, we're hiring also, so there's a slide to that.
Wait, sorry, are you leading into the really peptide market?
Yeah, we would love to go into the biohacker market for sure. Like there's like biohacking, skincare, sleep, weight loss. These are things people care about and I think are sort of underserved at the moment. And this type of mechanism design could make that much more easy to like test out. And also, people don't want to wait 5 years to figure out if their like peptide is going to work. Like you want that right. You want that in like a year. So yeah, I hope to go into like more of the peptide market. Yeah.
Is the same mechanism that protects shadow trials from dishonest participants also protect from civil attacks?
Yeah, because you have to like stake. Yeah, so a civil attack is when you have more identities than dollars. Here, because you're backing each of your pieces of data with dollars, your identity doesn't really matter as much. Yeah, civil attacks are a huge problem, and I think like civil attacks happen in Reddit forums on clinical trial things. Like I'm sure people are posting random stuff there and like trying to mess with things. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So the real vision here is to create a financial mechanism for scientific truth, and where you can price all sort of risks surrounding science and drug discovery. And then we're hiring. So if you would like to work on this project together, it's a small team but mighty. This is the first thing here. If you want to like partner on something, maybe you're a CRO, maybe you have an AI startup that wants to trade on this, maybe you have another idea on something that we should be doing that we're not doing, just DM us on Twitter. That's probably the best way, or come up and I'll give you my email or phone number after. And then, of course, the website is at the end if you want to read about different clinical trials that are happening. So, thank you all. We'll stick around for a bit. We're gonna I know we had some questions. We had a lot of questions. Is there any other questions that exist before we close? We'll do one. Yes, go ahead. Yeah, so there's a way to submit different trials to the website through a form, and then people can actually vote Reddit style on which one of these. The problem is these markets need some amount of liquidity, so we can't accept all of them. But if there's enough demand, we can do that. Amazing. Well, thank you guys for coming out, and feel free to get some drinks and food. And and then lastly, if you haven't done this, this is on Thursday. We're having him come. He's a very fun guy. So make sure to come to this. Thank you guys.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, I should introduce myself.
myself. So I'm James. I'm actually the guy that you'd be selling this data to. So
hell yeah.
So I run clinical. So sorry for asking the tough questions. I actually run clinical trial strategy for oncology in California. So if I'm so curious about this. Like it's very interesting because there's all your takes, right? There's a lot of questions, a lot of things that we can do with this that I think would be really smart for offers. Like for example, like if you're finding a work or looking at the time, like you can honestly have one person market. You did like a 2x2, you can trade on with safety and efficacy for example. I don't know, I think it's very, like, personally, I generate a lot of projects because most of the items are coming up with values of assets and rankings and stuff like that. And this is much more advanced than anything in the history of working with machine. Most of what I do is also more strategies for
AI. I used to do clinical trials. Now I'm strictly AI.
Okay, cool. And here,
I'm much bigger anonymous on Twitter than on my face, so, alright.
discussion out into the bar, but we just have to clear out of this room. But you're more, get a drink, get a beer, get a food out there, and we'll continue on.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Dude, of course. I'm glad it went well. It was a lot of people for the space that we have, but I mean, that's a good thing, you know? Yeah, and I ran the mic through the bar so people could hear it too. Okay, so thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah, of course, no worries. Amazing.
We also ran into another friend that's in bio. When you get the chance, come on up.
I'm just gonna pack up my stuff here. Hey man, how's it going? Saw you. Nice to see you again. Wait, we can also have.
Oh, hey, I was going to put that on my laptop. Cool, thank you.
You want a sticker? Sure. I'll throw one away. I say that was really cool, even though some people were really critical that we're not understanding it. Yeah, I'd say it was really cool presentation. I think a lot of people were like overly critical, and then too, they were reminded with regards to like how they see biotech and how this is different. Yeah, especially for the peptides and like what you're saying, stimulants and things like that. So nice to see. What do you work on? So I mean, I'm trying to build things in the CPG space. I have a background in marketing. Obviously, I've been partaking in the longevity space for a long time. I've also been like investing in as well in some of these prediction markets things. I have friends out there. Nice. I actually want to introduce you to my friends in Poland that are actually running a AI platform for prediction markets. They actually got an investment from Red Labs. It's called Elastics. It's basically it's going to be pretty interesting to expand some of the markets. Do you still provide ashes and mix, or do you still provide the biohacking meetup and ashes, house, and mix? Okay, I think they kept. Oh, they did. Anyway, I'll let you get back to the Oh, really? You want a sticker?
Why not? I don't think any pharma company would ever use biotech. Okay. There's a lot of litigation. I would be very surprised. I used to be a biotech manager.
Awesome stuff, man. What is the motivation for the idea? I just wanted to create financial markets.
And this seems to go first side effect. So that's more. I'm surprised. Part of he's the CEO of Quant Health, and we're in the business of predicting clinical trials prospectively. It's one of the ideas, and so like if you. So if you think about what are you thinking? What do you think companies that
There's a lot of things we can do in France, so we don't just produce clinical trials, but we actually do some simulators. Okay. So clinical trial simulation companies. We work with most of the top 20 pharmas and biotechs to help them optimize their trials. So we basically we spend about $5 million a year on data alone. They'll double down on compute. Very complex biological models predict how individual patients respond to therapy. The novel therapies, not the drugs that are already approved. That's easy. So we use this advanced technology to optimize, really to simulate entire trials. You can simulate any clinical trial that you like, not just ones that are on the market. So we could even help you like conceive an idea for a shadow trial.
That would be great.
I'm still wrapping my head around how you're building it. We've had a lot of discussions with hedge funds and equity firms. You tell me, you're in the industry. I mean, we're venture backed, so I have the contacts. We have contacts, but not all of us do that. I mean, Wall Street is full of these people. They have no shots.
They approach you.
Hello again. Sorry, everyone. Please have you move to the middle room or the front room. Everybody in the back room, please. I need to get a comedy show set up for 9:30. Thank you so much. Glad you enjoyed. Thank you.
Guys, let's move into the other room. In the other room. Let's go in the other room. I just have to pack up some stuff here.
So, ASCO, we were there a few days ago, and my team predicted this trial, the DMS trial that read out at ASCO. We simulated it a few months ago. On the news. So we did.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What does it compare to if I plug in a ChatGPT?
We didn't do the prediction. It's a good question. We actually want to start benchmarking it against it. We know our models are orders of magnitude more accurate than some of the other ones. And they're not based on they're learning based on biology things. Specialized for this.
Let me pack up. Are you good to be outside? Yeah, I'll be there. Give me 2 seconds. Guys, let's go into the main room. We're trying to clear this up.
What are you feeling for the setup this time? You want tables?
Maybe last time I did.
I can help you out.
Just want to get everything reset and ready and just know what the vibe is here.
Yeah.